The smell of burnt espresso hit me before I even stepped behind the counter. Again. I sighed and pulled open the back door with my hip, balancing a paper bag of day-old pastries in one arm and Mint the cat clinging to my shoulder like a judgmental scarf. She meowed once, disapprovingly, and leapt off to claim her usual throne by the window. The shop was quiet, the kind of stillness that only came before office workers poured in like caffeine-deprived zombies. The flickering open sign buzzed weakly, and I made a mental note to ignore it again today. "Milan, you are not paid enough for this," I muttered, tossing my tote on the floor behind the register. I wasn't paid enough, period. The owner had been on vacation for 2 months now. No phone calls. No visits. Just weekly bank transfers that barely counted as a paycheck and an occasional passive-aggressive text about not using too many coffee beans. But it was a job. And when you're fresh out of college with a liberal arts degree, a job is a gift from the employment gods. Even if you're the cashier, the barista, the janitor, and occasionally, if the espresso machine exploded, the plumber. By 9:43 a.m., I'd brewed 3 carafes, wiped down the tables, and memorized the coffee orders of at least 7 people who didn't care to learn my name. And then, he walked in. Wrinkled suit. Tie half undone. Expensive-looking watch hanging too loose on his wrist, like he'd lost weight recently. There was something off about him, and I don't just mean the dried coffee stain on his blazer. He looked haunted. He sat down at the far corner table, the one people usually avoided because the ceiling leaked above it when it rained. I approached with my notebook, but he didn't even look up.
"Just whatever's strongest,"
he said, voice hoarse. Coming right up. I brought him a double espresso. No sugar, no cream. He didn't thank me, just stared into it like it might tell him his fortune. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The place remained quiet. And then, all at once, he started talking.
"My CFO quit yesterday. Took 3 managers with him,"
he said. No context. No name. Just pain. I glanced around, no other customers. Just me, him, and Mint, who'd perched on the counter and blinked at him like she, too, had been betrayed by upper management.
"I built this company from scratch.
He continued, voice cracking.
10 years. Sleepless nights. And now it's collapsing faster than I can save it."
I opened my mouth, then closed it. What do you say to a man breaking in a coffee shop?
"It's not about the money anymore,"
he added, burying his face in his hands.
"It's the shame."
Silence. Espresso steam curled between us. Maybe. I offered quietly. It's time your company helps people instead of trying to impress them. He looked up. Really looked at me, like I'd just slapped him awake. I mean. I stammered. I don't know what you do, but sometimes businesses forget the people part. And that's sad. He said nothing. Just stared at me for a long moment, eyes wide, then stood up and placed a crumpled $10 bill on the counter.
"Thank you,"
he whispered. Then he left. I watched him go, thinking I'd never see him again. I was wrong. He didn't even leave a tip. Not a penny. After pouring his heart out over a cup of espresso I made with beans I had to beg the supplier to deliver on credit, he just dropped a wrinkled 10 for the drink and walked out like a tragic movie character, cue slow zoom and sad piano music. Mint stared at the door for a solid minute, then looked back at me with her usual unimpressed face. Yeah, I sighed, wiping down the counter. I know. I'm a sucker. But I didn't regret it. Not really. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, and if a few kind words helped him step back, then maybe my overly sentimental heart wasn't such a liability after all. Still, no tip. The rest of the week passed in its usual rhythm. Morning rush. Afternoon slump. Me, brewing and wiping and smiling like I wasn't dead inside. The owner didn't show. Again. Shocking. On Thursday, I came in to find Mint curled up in the pastry display case like she paid rent. I slid the door open and she leapt out with a yawn, licking her paw like royalty while I pulled out trays of new muffins. The bell over the door jingled at exactly 9:43 a.m. I didn't look up until I heard the voice.
Strongest thing you've got.
He stood at the counter looking less like a wilted plant and more like a mildly soggy one. He still had that expensive but crumpled vibe, but his eyes weren't as hollow. I froze, halfway through tossing a croissant. You again? He looked up and finally met my eyes.
I'm Trevor, by the way.
Milan. I said, gesturing around the shop. I run this place. Or, I guess I work here, technically. But since my boss is MIA 90% of the time. I spread my hands with a small flourish. I'm the entire crew. Welcome to the most overworked coffee shop in the city.
Nice to meet you, Milan.
He said, and this time, his smile felt real.
You make good coffee.
Wait till you try my snickerdoodles, I said, leaning on the counter a little. I make those too. Dishwasher, baker, barista, therapist, you name it. He paused for a moment, eyes softening.
I might take you up on the therapist part.
Right on cue, Mint, my ever-judgy calico queen, let out a perfectly unimpressed meow from her spot on the stool by the counter. I pointed at her with a grin. And that's Mint. Our emotionally unavailable manager. I'm surprised you came back, I said, grabbing a fresh shot of espresso.
I thought about what you said.
Oh. I raised an eyebrow, sliding the cup across the counter.
It stuck with me.
He paused, then reached into his wallet. And pulled out $100 bill. I blinked. This is too much, I stammered.
I don't think it is.
He said.
Consider it a thank you. For saving my company.
I made coffee and said one sentence. I didn't save anything.
Maybe not on purpose.
He admitted.
But it worked.
He turned to leave again, but paused at the door.
You'll see it on the news soon.
He added.
We're rebranding. Whole new direction. People first.
And then he walked out. Mint, who had climbed onto the espresso machine, meowed once. Okay, now I regret calling him a deadbeat, I muttered. Trevor became a regular. He showed up every morning at 9:43 a.m. like clockwork, always ordered the strongest thing on the menu, always tipped like he thought I was single-handedly keeping the economy alive. And he always sat at the same table, the leaky one no one liked, even though there were perfectly good seats by the window. He claimed it had character. I claimed it had mildew. We didn't talk much after that second visit. Sometimes a few words, sometimes a nod. But he always looked at me like I'd done something important. And that was new. People usually saw me as the coffee girl. The cheerful, reliable, walking caffeine dispenser. Not someone with ideas. Not someone who could change a whole company's fate with an offhand comment and a decent latte. But Trevor did. I didn't tell anyone, of course. When you start thinking you matter too much, life has a way of smacking you back down. And I liked my peaceful little bubble, coffee beans, mint, and manageable existential dread. Then she arrived. Sally. The first thing she did when she walked in was complain about the smell of coffee.
The air in here is so roasted,
she said, wrinkling her nose like she'd stepped in something organic. I stared at her, apron already on, morning rush just beginning. It's a coffee shop. She laughed like I'd made a joke, then handed me a printed resume. Like we were in a corporate office and not standing next to a cat on a pastry case. Apparently, the owner, blessed be his lazy soul, had hired her online after she messaged the shop's ancient Facebook page. No interview. No heads up. Just Sally. She wore lip gloss at 7 in the morning and heels to mop the floor. I gave her a week. But then Trevor walked in. And Sally saw the tip. A neat 100 slid across the counter, folded beneath his palm like a secret. Her eyes sparkled like a magpie spotting jewelry. She leaned in so fast I swore I heard wind resistance.
Hi there.
She cooed.
Can I get you anything else? More sugar? Cream? A side of, I don't know, admiration?
Trevor blinked at her, then looked at me. Same as usual? I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Sally tried again the next day. And the next. Hair curled, perfume strong enough to flavor the air, voice sweet enough to rot teeth. Trevor never budged. He kept tipping me. Kept thanking me. Kept ignoring every suggestive flick of Sally's eyelashes like he'd been vaccinated against flirtation. And Sally wasn't used to being ignored. Not even a little. It started small. Missing supplies. Dirty dishes left accidentally in the sanitizer. Tips that somehow didn't make it into the jar. I wasn't suspicious at first, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, right? Especially in a chaotic little shop like ours where the blender sounds like it's chewing rocks and mint naps in the milk crate. But then the real stuff started.
I heard Milan served a customer the wrong order.
Sally whispered to the owner one day during a surprise 15-minute pop-in.
He looked really upset. Poor guy didn't even finish his drink.
Lies. I hadn't made a mistake in weeks. But the owner glanced at me with a pinched expression and said,
"You've been slipping lately. Try to keep up."
Then he disappeared again, like a sitcom dad with no screen time. I was stunned. Not because Sally tattled, I'd been working in customer service long enough to recognize a snake in lip gloss, but because she was good at it. Innocent tone. Sad little frown.
I'm just worried about the shop.
Line she trotted out like a show pony. And Trevor? Trevor didn't know any of it. He still came in. Still tipped. Still sat at his mildew table and gave me a soft smile every time I slid his coffee over with trembling fingers. But behind the counter, I was unraveling. Sally's reports got bolder. She told the owner I was rude to customers. Slow. Disrespectful. Lazy. Me. The girl scrubbing sticky syrup off the floor after closing, feeding the cat, managing inventory, and fixing the espresso machine with duct tape and a prayer. I tried to fight it. I did. I sent emails. Left notes. But the owner barely responded, and when he did, it was clipped and vague. And then it happened. I walked in one morning, tired but ready, only to find a note taped to the register in blocky handwriting.
Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. We've decided to move in a new direction. Please return the key. Management.
My fingers went cold. Mint looked up from her perch and meowed once. I took off my apron. Folded it neatly. Set it on the counter like a goodbye letter. And I walked out. No one followed. No one stopped me. The bell over the door jingled like it always did. I walked back to my little apartment, the one with the flickering light and the leaky sink, and I cried. The ugly kind. The kind that makes your whole chest ache and your face blotchy for hours. Mint had followed me, as if she knew. I curled up on the couch, cat in my arms, and told myself it didn't matter. Trevor would never know. It wasn't his problem. He was just a customer. Right? Trevor showed up at 9:43 a.m. Just like always. The bell rang, the door opened, and his eyes did what they always did, swept the shop, looking for me behind the counter. But I wasn't there. And Sally was.
Oh, hey there.
She chirped, brushing invisible dust off her too tight blouse.
Milan's gone. Management finally realized she was kind of a dead weight.
Trevor blinked once. Then twice.
What?
She giggled.
I mean, no offense. She was sweet and all, but she just wasn't good for business, you know?
He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He didn't even nod. Instead, he stepped up to the counter, looked her dead in the eyes, and asked,
Where is she?
Sally blinked, caught off guard.
Well, she left. No idea where. But hey! I make a great cappuccino.
I didn't ask about your cappuccino.
He said, voice like cut glass.
I asked where Milan is.
Something about the way he said my name must have chilled her spine, because she faltered, lips parting with a flicker of panic. Trevor didn't wait. He turned on his heel and walked out. And started hunting me down. He checked social media. Asked around. Dug through old receipts to find the contact number I'd once scribbled on a sticky note when the POS system broke. Called. Texted. Emailed. And then my phone buzzed where it lay face down on my coffee table.
Text message. Unknown number. Milan, it's Trevor. I just found out. Please call me. Or text. Or send a carrier pigeon, anything. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that.
I stared at it with mint curled against my side like a therapy plushie. Then came another.
I didn't realize what was happening. But I'm going to fix it. If you'll let me.
And then another.
Would you mind if I open a coffee shop for you? On the first floor of my building. I want to drink your coffee every morning. Only yours.
I burst into tears all over again, but it was different this time. Lighter. The kind of crying that has a tiny, flickering spark at the end of it. Hope. And maybe, a little love, too. I said yes. To everything. The coffee shop. The new start. The man who asked so sincerely it made my chest ache. A week later, I stood in front of a sleek little storefront nestled at the base of a glass building, heart pounding like it was my first day on earth. The sign above the door said 1 cup at a time. I didn't name it. Trevor did. He said it reminded him of how I helped him, how one little cup of coffee and one offhand comment changed everything. The inside still smelled like fresh paint and sawdust, but the bar was polished, the beans were high quality, and the espresso machine had more buttons than I could comprehend. I stepped behind the counter and exhaled. Home. Mint was already sprawled out on the windowsill like she owned the place. Trevor came in exactly at 9:43 a.m. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, watching me wipe down the counter and organize mugs like I wasn't a girl who'd just been fired and rebuilt all in the span of 2 weeks. Then he smiled. The real kind. The kind that crinkled his eyes and made my knees feel like half-melted sugar cubes.
I missed this.
He said softly. I cleared my throat. Your coffee?
You.
Cue short-circuiting. I busied myself making his usual. When I slid it across the counter, he took one long sip and sighed like his soul had been returned to his body. Then, completely casual, he added.
So, would you want to go on a date sometime?
I nearly fumbled a milk pitcher. Like, a real date? I squeaked, already mentally scanning my closet for something other than coffee-stained cardigans. He chuckled.
Yes. With someone who likes your coffee in your brain.
Okay, I whispered. Okay? That's all I managed? Mint meowed, probably judging me. The night of our date, I wore a soft blue dress and tried not to fall apart. We walked through the city like we'd always known how to walk side by side. It was easy. So easy. And then we passed by the old coffee shop. It was dark. Closed. A for-lease sign taped to the inside of the glass. Trevor glanced at me.
Did you hear what happened?
I shook my head.
Sally drove the place into the ground.
He said, with a tone that wasn't smug, just tired.
Customers complained. She snapped at people. Stole tips. Eventually, even the absentee owner couldn't ignore it. Place shut down in less than a month.
I didn't know what to feel. Vindicated? Sad? Victorious? But then Trevor laced his fingers through mine and said,
You deserved better. And now you have it.
And I realized I didn't need revenge to feel satisfied. I just needed this. If you'd told me a month ago I'd be running a coffee shop I didn't hate, that I'd be making lattes for executives in glass buildings while a man with $1 billion smile flirted with me over espresso foam, I'd have laughed nervously. Then gone back to scrubbing caramel syrup off my shoes. But now? Now I wake up early, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I know at 9:43 a.m., like clockwork, Trevor's going to walk in with his tie a little crooked and eyes a little tired and smile like seeing me is the best part of his day. Mint, meanwhile, has become a phenomenon. Trevor's marketing team, yes, marketing team, made an Instagram account for her. Within a week, at Minty Mocha Queen had over 20,000 followers. People now come to one cup at a time just to meet her. They take photos of her basking on the espresso machine. They bring her toys. One guy asked if she could sign his to-go cup with a paw print. We made a custom stamp. Mint is thriving. Trevor is thriving. And maybe I am too. One quiet evening, just after closing, Trevor sat at the counter, watching me do the final wipe down. The playlist had switched to something slow, jazzy. Outside, the city glowed gold and sleepy.
You know,
He said.
I still think about that first cup of coffee.
I grinned. The one you didn't tip for? He laughed, full and genuine.
I've been tipping you back ever since.
I leaned on the counter, folding my arms. You really have. He reached over. Took my hand.
You changed my life, Milan.
And you gave me mine back. For a moment, everything stood still. Then he leaned in. And I met him halfway. The kiss was gentle. Familiar. Like coming home after a long day and slipping into a hoodie still warm from the dryer. Mint meowed loudly from her perch. We broke apart, laughing. I think she's jealous, I said.
She's the real boss here.
Trevor replied, mock serious. And honestly? She was. But that night, as we turned off the lights and locked up, I looked at the glowing sign, one cup at a time, and knew one thing for certain. This was our happy ending. And we brewed it ourselves. Some people celebrate the holidays with snow. We went with sand. Trevor booked the trip as a surprise. He said I'd been working too hard, which was rich coming from the man who tried to take conference calls with an iced latte in one hand and a cat in the other. But I didn't argue. How could I, when I stepped off the plane and was greeted by sunshine, ocean air, and resort staff holding chilled coconut drinks with tiny umbrellas? We stayed at a beachside bungalow where the bed was fluffier than a croissant, the air smelled like sunscreen and mangoes, and Mint immediately claimed the hammock as her throne. You think they'd let her in the spa? I joked, watching her stretch out like she paid rent here.
They should. She has more followers than the resort.
Trevor deadpanned, scrolling through Mint's latest post. It was a shot of her lounging in sunglasses and a sun hat with the caption, "My humans brought me to a 5-star resort. Took them long enough." 67,000 likes in 3 hours. We snorkeled. We kayaked. We drank out of pineapples and got tipsy off minty mojitos while lying under the stars. One night, we built a bonfire on the beach. Trevor pulled me close, resting his chin on my shoulder as the flames flickered and waves kissed the shore.
This has been the best year of my life.
He said, soft and low. I smiled, letting the warmth soak into my bones. Mine too. He kissed my temple.
Next year, maybe a second shop.
I turned to look at him. With Mint as the official mascot?
Already trademarked her name.
Of course you did. Mint meowed from her cozy spot in a beach chair, wrapped in a sarong and completely unbothered. Her tail flicked once, like a queen approving her subjects. I leaned back into Trevor's arms, watching the ocean shimmer under the moonlight. We'd brewed more than coffee together. We brewed a life. A soft, steady kind of love. 1 cup at a time.